What if a single night could completely change the fate of a king and turn his deadliest enemy into his greatest ally? King Jalaluddin had everything: power, wealth, armies, and a mighty kingdom. But deep inside, he was haunted by three mysterious questions no one could answer. Desperate to uncover the truth, he traveled alone into the mountains to meet a strange old hermit. But what happened there was beyond anything he could have imagined. A wounded stranger, a hidden revenge plot, and one life-changing lesson would soon reveal the greatest secret of all. This incredible story will completely change the way you see life forever. Long ago, beyond the mighty mountains and flowing rivers, there existed a glorious kingdom called Nuristan. Its ruler, King Jalaluddin, was known far and wide for his immense power and wealth. His armies were countless, his treasure rooms overflowed with gold and silver, and his empire stretched across distant lands. Yet despite having everything a man could desire, the king carried an emptiness deep within his heart. Every night, when the royal palace fell silent and only the footsteps of guards echoed through the halls, King Jalaluddin would stand beside his window and stare at the stars above. One thought constantly troubled him. What is the true purpose of life? One moonlit night, three strange questions entered his mind. Questions so powerful they would change his destiny forever. He whispered to himself, "If I can find the answers to these questions, I may never make another wrong decision." The three questions were: what is the most important moment in life? Who is the most important person? What is the most important thing a person can do? The next morning, the king summoned a grand royal court. Messengers spread the announcement across villages, cities, and deserts. Whoever answers the king's three questions correctly shall receive 1,000 gold coins and royal honor. Soon, scholars, generals, merchants, wise men, and philosophers filled the palace hall. One scholar stepped forward and said, "The most important time is the future, because we must prepare for it." The king listened, but felt unsatisfied. Another minister declared, "The most important person is the king himself, because the fate of the kingdom depends on him." Still, the king found no peace. A famous commander then said, "The most important task is winning wars, because a strong kingdom controls everything." Some people applauded, but the king remained troubled. Everyone had different answers, yet none touched his heart. Frustrated, the king dismissed the court. At that moment, an old advisor quietly approached him and whispered, "If your majesty truly seeks wisdom, you must visit the hermit who lives deep in the mountains." The king immediately decided to go. Disguised in ordinary clothes, accompanied by only one loyal soldier, he traveled through forests and rocky valleys until he finally reached a small hut hidden among the hills. Outside the hut, an old hermit was slowly digging the ground with trembling hands. The king approached respectfully. "Wise elder, I have come seeking answers to three important questions." But the hermit remained silent and continued digging. Seeing the old man exhausted, the king offered, "Please rest. I will continue the work." The hermit handed him the shovel without a word. For hours, the king dug the earth while the old man quietly watched. Evening arrived, yet the king still had no answers. Suddenly, a wounded man stumbled out of the bushes and collapsed near the hut. Blood poured from a deep wound in his stomach. Without hesitation, the king rushed to help him. He tore his own cloth to bandage the wound and carried the injured stranger inside the hut. All night long, the king stayed awake caring for the man, giving him water, changing his bandages, and trying to save his life. But the king had no idea that this wounded stranger was actually his enemy. Near dawn, the injured man finally opened his eyes and weakly whispered, "Please forgive me." The king looked confused. "Why should I forgive you?" With tears in his eyes, the man replied, "I came here to kill you." The king froze in shock. The stranger explained that years earlier, his innocent brother had been killed during one of the king's military battles. Since then, he had sworn revenge. "When I learned you were traveling to visit the hermit, I hid in the forest waiting to attack you," he confessed. "But your guard discovered me first and wounded me." The man lowered his head in shame. "I came here to take your life, but instead, you saved mine." The king remained silent for a long moment. Then softly he said, "I forgive you." The wounded man burst into tears. At sunrise, the king finally approached the hermit once again. "Wise elder," he said, "I have waited since yesterday. Please tell me the answers to my questions." The hermit smiled gently. "You have already received them." The king stared at him in confusion. The hermit explained, "The most important moment is the present moment, because it is the only time you truly control. If you had not stayed here helping me dig the ground, your enemy would have attacked and killed you on your journey back." The king listened carefully. "The most important person," the hermit continued, "is the one standing before you at this very moment, because you never know who may enter or leave your life. First, I was the most important person because I needed your help. Later, the wounded man became the most important person because he needed your care." The king slowly nodded as understanding filled his heart. "And the most important action," said the hermit, "is to do good for others." He pointed toward the sleeping wounded man. "Because you showed kindness instead of hatred, your enemy became your friend." At that moment, the king felt something he had not experienced in years: true peace. When King Jalaluddin returned to Nuristan, he changed the way he ruled his kingdom. He ordered justice for prisoners, support for the poor, and hospitals for the sick. He began traveling among his people, listening to their struggles, and helping them personally. Over time, the kingdom transformed. Enemies became allies, villages prospered, and the people loved their king not for his power, but for his wisdom and compassion. Years later, standing beneath the same moon that once filled him with confusion, King Jalaluddin smiled peacefully and said, "The secret of life was always simple. I just took too long to understand it." And from that day forward, history remembered him not merely as a powerful ruler, but as a wise and merciful king. People continued telling his story for generations, always repeating the 3 lessons that changed his life forever. The most important moment is now. The most important person is the one before you. And the most important thing you can do is show kindness.